It raises some key questions that fuel its argument, like how did weapons even get into this high security area? That's question one.
A fair question on the surface, if the premise of high security holds.
Question two, why didn't the security forces apparently know anything beforehand or during?
Right, the element of surprise versus alleged security presence.
And third, the source points to the very quick political reaction, the blaming that happened almost immediately afterwards.
Okay, so the speed of the narrative formation is also seen as suspicious by this source.
Exactly. It weaves these questions together to suggest something wasn't right, wasn't spontaneous.
And the language it uses to frame all this.
It's incredibly strong. Terms like pre-planned genocide and repeated use of false flag operations.
Yeah, false flag specifically implies deliberate deception, right? Making it look like someone else did it.
That's the core meaning, yes. An act committed to deliberately pin the blame on another party.
So using that term immediately tells you the source believes these weren't just attacks, but manipulations.
And it doesn't stop there. The source claims this isn't a new tactic in Indian politics. It says playing the victim card, as it puts it, is a recurring strategy.
Does it give other examples?
So let's lay out what this source claims. It starts by going back 25 years,
Okay.
and it makes this really stark allegation that the Indian state killed 35 Sikh citizens specifically to blame Pakistan.
Wow, okay. And does it say how it knows this?
It cites a supposed confession from a Lieutenant General K.S. Gill. That's the basis presented.
A purported confession. That's quite a foundation to build on.
It is. And the source argues this wasn't just, an isolated thing. It claims this was done to sort of legitimize later actions.
Actions like what?
Specifically, according to the source, the killing of Muslims in Kashmir. It suggests the first incident paved the way, created justification.
So it's drawing a direct causal link, essentially, between these two alleged events, separated by time and victim group.
Precisely. Then the source brings us much closer to the present day. It talks about a recent incident in Kashmir where 26 people were killed.
And it sees parallels.
Directly. It does. It points to the 2002 Gujarat riots and also the 2019 Pulwama attack as further instances of this alleged pattern.
So it's trying to build a broader case, suggesting a kind of playbook for using violence for political gain.
That seems to be the central thesis, connecting dots across decades and different contexts.
And what's the ultimate accusation? What does the source claim is the driving force behind particularly the alleged violence against Muslims?
It's very direct on this point. It alleges it's about religious hatred, pure and simple, and that it's also a calculated way to win votes.
So a mix of religious animosity and cynical political strategy. That's the motive presented.
That's the core interpretation offered in this piece we're looking at. It's undeniably a very serious and controversial set of claims.
Absolutely.
Now, it's really important for us and for you listening to be clear about our purpose here.
Yeah.
We are not trying to prove or disprove these allegations. That's way beyond what we can do with just this source material.
Right. We don't have independent verification or counter arguments right in front of us in this deep dive.
Our goal is to understand this specific perspective, to carefully unpack the arguments it's making, see how it connects these events, and grasp the narrative it's constructing.
We're basically tracing the logic within this viewpoint, seeing how it gets from point A to point B to its final conclusions.
Okay, so let's try to synthesize this. What are the main pillars of the argument presented in this source?
Well, the big one is this recurring pattern idea that India, or elements within the state, allegedly uses state-sponsored violence.
Right.
And then disguises it, makes it look like attacks by others, what it calls false flag operations.
And it grounds this in that historical claim about the Sikh killings, citing the alleged Gill confession and linking that forward.
Exactly. Linking it as a precedent, almost, for justifying subsequent alleged violence against Muslims in Kashmir.
Then there's the focus on the recent Kashmir incident. The source uses those unanswered questions, the weapons, the security, the fast reaction,
as evidence, essentially, to suggest this wasn't what it seemed, that it fits the alleged false flag pattern, even using that term pre-planned genocide.
So the core questions the source is pushing are about motive, why these killings happen, and about state involvement.
Yes, and also about the international reaction, or what the source seems to imply is a lack of sufficient reaction or scrutiny.
Specifically for the recent Kashmir case, it really hammers those points.
Yep.
How did the weapons get in? Why the alleged security lapse? Why the immediate political blame game? These are presented as red flags.
According to this source, yes. Indicators that things aren't adding up with the official story.
So just to reiterate for everyone listening, We've been exploring one particular and highly critical viewpoint today.
A viewpoint filled with extremely serious allegations about state actions, motivations, and deception.
It presents a narrative linking historical events to recent tragedies, interpreting them through this lens of false flag operations and political manipulation.
And it really forces you to think about the possibility, again, according to the source, that violence could be used deliberately as a political tool disguised to achieve specific ends.
So, considering the historical connections the source draws and these really pointed questions it raises about potential state involvement, it leaves us with a pretty challenging thought.
Hmm.
What are the broader implications if claims like these hold any truth? How does it change how we understand conflict, political motives, and maybe even international relations in that region?
It definitely offers a very specific and unsettling lens, something that, warrants more critical thinking and maybe encourages looking for more information from diverse sources on your own.